There is a stretch of dirt road in northern China where grass refuses to grow. It has refused for over 2,200 years. Rain cannot reclaim it. Roots cannot crack it. Earthquakes have swallowed entire cities nearby, and still, this road endures. Scientists dug into it expecting answers. What they found instead was a secret so advanced it should not have existed in 212 BC. Stay right here, because by the end of this video, everything you thought you knew about ancient engineering is going to collapse. In the next few minutes, you are going to discover how one paranoid emperor built a highway network so vast it dwarfed the Roman road system. You will see how ancient workers carved 9 consecutive mountain passes in a perfectly straight line. Without GPS, without dynamite, without cranes. You will learn how they filled entire valleys as if they were puddles. And in the final segment, you will learn the one secret buried inside this road's soil that modern scientists still cannot fully replicate. Every section of this video gets more extraordinary than the last. Do not skip ahead. You need to see this in order to believe it. Picture the year 221 BC. After centuries of war, brutal, grinding, dynasty-collapsing war, a single man stands at the center of a newly unified China. His name is Ying Zheng. History remembers him as Qinzhi Huang, the first emperor. He has just accomplished something that no human being in 4,000 years of Chinese civilization had managed to do. He conquered 6 rival kingdoms in 15 years. And now he has a problem that would break most rulers. An empire this large cannot be controlled from one throne. Information takes weeks to travel. Armies take months to mobilize. One rebellion in the wrong province could unravel everything he has built. So he makes a decision that is either visionary or delusional, perhaps both. He is going to connect his entire empire with roads, and not just any roads, roads engineered like weapons. Within years of unification, Qinzhi Huang ordered the construction of the Qidao, the imperial highway network. These were not dirt tracks carved by footsteps. These were engineered corridors, 30 paces wide, roughly 40 meters, built on raised earthen beds so that rainfall drained away from the road surface instead of pooling and destroying it. Pine trees were planted at precise intervals along the edges, acting as both windbreaks and visual markers. The entire network eventually stretched an estimated 6,800 kilometers. That is not a misprint. 6,800 kilometers of engineered roads, built in roughly 15 years, in the 3rd century before the Common Era. The Roman road network, which historians celebrate endlessly, took centuries to reach comparable scale. The Qin did it inside a single emperor's reign. But the Qidao was only the beginning, because one road in this network was different from all the others. One road was so extreme in its conception that ancient writers called it a miracle. The road was called Qinzhi, Z, meaning straight, meaning direct, meaning absolute. This was the straight road. It ran north from Xianyang, the Qin capital near modern-day Xi'an, all the way to Zhuoyuan, modern Baotou in Inner Mongolia, a distance of approximately 700 kilometers. Its purpose was singular and terrifying in its logic. The Xiongnu, nomadic warriors of the northern steppes, the people the Romans would later call the Huns, were raiding the empire's northern frontier, and Qinzhi Huang had decided that the only answer to speed was more speed. The straight road was designed so that an imperial army could march from the capital to the northern frontier in 3 days, not 3 weeks. 3 days. That single engineering decision changed the military calculus of an entire continent. To understand why this road was radical, you need to understand the terrain it crossed. The route between Xianyang and Zhuoyuan is not flat. It is not cooperative. It is a brutal sequence of mountain ranges, deep lush gorges, river valleys, and plateaus. Any sensible road builder would have curved around the obstacles, following the natural contours of the land the way every road in human history had done until this moment. Qinzhi Huang's engineers did not curve. They did not detour. They cut through everything in a straight line. Historians and archaeologists who study this road still struggle to explain how this was decided, let alone executed, without modern surveying technology. And yet the most recent archaeological confirmation, a 13-kilometer section uncovered in Yulin, Shanxi province in December 2025, shows something extraordinary. 9 consecutive mountain passes, notched and leveled in an unbroken straight alignment. 9 mountains, in a row, cut straight through. General Meng Tian commanded the construction. He was already one of the most powerful military minds in the Qin Empire, famous for pushing the Xiongnu back beyond the Yellow River with an army of 300,000. Now those same soldiers and hundreds of thousands of conscripted laborers were handed earthen rammers instead of spears. The scale of labor is almost incomprehensible. Valleys were filled with compacted earth. Cliffs were carved open. Entire ridgelines were leveled by hand. And what emerged from this brutal multi-year campaign of earth moving was a road 40 meters wide, wider than most modern highways, running with mathematical precision across 700 kilometers of hostile terrain. But the most unsettling discovery about this road has nothing to do with its size or its straightness. It has to do with what happens when you try to plant something on it. And that story is waiting for you in the final section. Modern engineers build roads using layered systems: graded aggregate base, compacted subbase, asphalt or concrete surface layer. Each layer serves a structural purpose: drainage, load distribution, resistance to surface stress. Ancient road builders, we assume, simply packed dirt and hoped for the best. The Qinzhi destroyed that assumption completely. Archaeological excavations of the road's cross-section revealed a sophisticated multi-layer construction method that was not accidental. The builders used loess, the fine-grained, wind-deposited soil that blankets much of northern China, but they did not simply pile it. They rammed it in controlled layers, compressing each stratum before adding the next. The result was a roadbed with a density and load-bearing capacity that modern geotechnical analysis has described as remarkable. This was not instinct. This was engineering. The drainage problem alone would have defeated most ancient builders. Flat roads flood. Flooded roads erode. Eroded roads disappear. The Qin engineers solved this by building the road on a raised bed, a deliberate camber that channeled water away from the central travel surface toward the edges. They then reinforced the sloped edges with compacted rammed earth retaining walls, the same structural logic used in modern highway embankment design. In sections where the road crossed soft ground or river plains, they filled and compacted the underlying terrain before building upward. Archaeologists excavating a preserved stretch found filled valleys, entire low-lying sections of landscape packed with dense, layered earth to create a continuous, level road surface. This is exactly what modern highway engineers call controlled fill construction. The Qin executed it by hand, with rammers and baskets, 2,200 years before the concept had a name. But what happened when the land simply would not cooperate? When a mountain stood directly in the path of a perfectly straight road, the Qin engineers did not reroute. They carved. Straight-cut trenches were notched through ridgelines with precision that modern surveyors have described as startling. The recently confirmed 9 consecutive mountain notches in Yulin province follow a single straight alignment across kilometers of jagged terrain. Each notch was cut to the same road width at the same grade, maintaining the road's elevation profile. The coordination required to execute this, keeping every crew aligned across mountains they could not see over, without satellite positioning, without theodolites, speaks to a surveying system of remarkable sophistication. Historians believe the Qin used sighting poles, water levels, and astronomical observation to maintain their straight lines. They used the stars to build a road. Now consider the plank roads, the Jiandao. In the mountainous Qinling ranges to the south, where sheer cliff faces made ground-level construction impossible, Qin engineers invented something almost surreal. They drilled horizontal holes into cliff faces at regular intervals, inserted thick wooden beams, and laid planks across the beams to create a hanging road, a gallery road suspended against a vertical rock wall hundreds of meters above river gorges. These were not emergency improvised bridges. They were engineered transit corridors, some stretching for hundreds of kilometers through the Qinling and Mikang ranges, connecting the Qin heartland to the Shu region of modern-day Sichuan. The structural logic was perfect. The cliff face provided the load-bearing wall. The inserted beams acted as cantilevered supports. The road hung in thin air, and armies and supply carts crossed mountain ranges that should have been impassable. This is where ancient engineering becomes indistinguishable from the impossible. The road network also required logistics infrastructure that would not look out of place in a modern highway management system. At regular intervals, roughly every 30 kilometers, the Qin established relay stations. Horses were kept ready. Messages and official dispatches moved along the road at speeds that allowed the emperor to receive intelligence from the frontier and issue orders that reached commanders within days. This was not a road. It was a nervous system, a real-time communications and logistics network designed to give a single ruler in Shenyang effective command over an empire stretching from the South China Sea to the Mongolian steppe. When Rome built its roads centuries later, historians called it the arteries of empire. The Qin had already written that blueprint and left it in the ground. There was one more engineering challenge the ancient builders faced that modern historians almost overlooked, until the road itself provided the evidence. The Qin Strait Road runs through some of the windiest, most erosion-prone terrain in Asia. The Loess Plateau of northern China is constantly reshaped by wind and water. Any ordinary earthen road built across this landscape should have eroded within decades. Within a century, it should have vanished completely. The fact that portions of this road still carry visible traces after 2,200 years of exposure is not explained by compaction alone. Something else was done to this road, something that kept it not only intact but biologically hostile to plant life. And the answer to that mystery, the answer that stunned modern soil scientists, is coming in the final. Before we get there, understand what this road network meant at the moment of its completion. Qin Shi Huang now controlled a continent. He could move an army of tens of thousands from his capital to the northern wall in 3 days. He could suppress rebellions in distant provinces before they gathered strength. He could move grain and supplies along engineered corridors that did not flood, did not erode, and did not depend on seasons. The road was not infrastructure, it was power made physical, compressed into the earth. And embedded into that earth was a secret that his engineers understood, and that the modern world is only beginning to appreciate. Here is the fact that changes everything. Locals in the Shanxi and Inner Mongolia regions have known about certain stretches of the Qinzhi Dao for generations, not from archaeology books, but from observation. There are strips of land running across the Loess Plateau where grass simply does not grow, not because the soil is rocky, not because the terrain is shaded. The surrounding landscape is covered in vegetation. But on these narrow, ruler-straight corridors, nothing takes root. Farmers avoid planting there. Children growing up near these sections of road pointed to them as strange ground. For centuries, this was folklore. Then scientists dug into the road, and folklore became the most disturbing discovery in ancient road engineering history. When soil scientists and archaeologists analyzed the compacted earthen surface of the Qin Strait Road, they found something that should not be there. The soil had been treated. Not just rammed and compressed, treated with what researchers have described as a form of organic polymer compound, applied through a soil firing or baking process that fundamentally altered the soil chemistry at the molecular level. Essentially, the Qin builders heated the road surface, firing the Loess in a process similar to kiln treatment, and introduced organic binding agents that fused the soil particles together into a semi-rigid, water-resistant matrix. The resulting compound made the road surface almost impermeable. Rainwater could not penetrate deep enough to support root systems. The soil pH and chemical composition after treatment became actively inhospitable to plant germination. And because the treatment bonded with the mineral structure of the Loess itself, it did not degrade on a human timescale, it degraded on a geological one. This is where it gets unbelievable. Modern soil engineers use synthetic polymer stabilizers to achieve similar effects on unpaved roads. The technology was patented in the 20th century. It is used in road construction across Africa, Central Asia, and Australia today. And the ancient Qin builders arrived at a functionally equivalent solution through empirical experimentation, more than 2,000 years before modern chemistry existed. They did not understand organic polymers, but they understood results. They fired the earth and they watched what happened. And what happened was a road that refused to die. In December 2025, Chinese archaeologists completed the excavation and confirmation of a 13-kilometer section of the Qin Strait Road in Yulin, Shanxi province. What they found was not a ruin, it was a testament. The road still followed its original straight alignment. The rammed earth construction was still identifiable in cross-section. The mountain notches were still visible as cut geometry in the landscape, unchanged after 2 millennia. In one location, the road surface, the actual original 2,200-year-old road surface, was still present beneath a thin layer of accumulated sediment. And adjacent to the road, the vegetation stopped at the edge of the treated soil, as if following an invisible instruction. Think about what this means in context. The Roman roads, celebrated as the greatest infrastructure achievement of the ancient world, were built with concrete, a sophisticated material composed of volcanic ash, lime, seawater, and aggregate, which archaeologists and engineers have spent decades trying to reverse engineer. Those roads began deteriorating within centuries of Rome's fall. The Qinzhi was built with earth, compressed earth, fired earth, chemically bound earth, but earth. And it has outlasted empires, dynasties, invasions, millennia of weather, and modern civilization's indifference. Not because of what it was made of in the conventional sense, but because of what its builders did to what it was made of. They transformed the most ordinary material on Earth into something that time could not consume. Qin Shi Huang's empire lasted only 15 years after his death. The Qin dynasty was one of the shortest in Chinese history. The Great Wall required constant rebuilding. The terracotta army slept underground unseen for 2,000 years. But the road, the straight road, kept its shape, kept its chemistry, kept its silence. And 2,200 years later, in a field in Shanxi province, when archaeologists brushed back the last layer of sediment and stood on the original road surface, they were standing exactly where an ancient army had stood, on exactly the same ground that was pressed and fired and sealed in 212 BC. That is not archaeology. That is a conversation across time. The Qinzhi Dao is proof that the line between ancient and advanced is not drawn by the calendar. It is drawn by the willingness to solve a problem with everything you have: observation, labor, experimentation, and an understanding that the thing you are building must outlast you. Qin Shi Huang built his road to win a war. What he accidentally built was a message that no empire, no erosion, and no century has been able to erase. The message is simple: build with intention, build with knowledge, and build as if the future is watching. Because 2,200 years from now, someone might brush the dirt from what you made and find that it is still standing. If this road made you see ancient history differently, the channel has more stories exactly like this one. Civilizations that built things we still cannot explain, solved problems we still struggle to solve, and left behind evidence that rewrites what we thought we knew about human capability. Subscribe to Dark Age History, hit the bell. The next discovery is already waiting.